Good morning, X Winterview. Back, driving, as usual, in his car, also as usual. This time, he's on the way to the beach via his favourite coffee shop. This is a good morning already, and nothing's happened yet. Once again, a brief dialogue from my dear friend Annastacey. Apologies in advance for the audio quality, the rickety driveway sounds at the moment, and soon traffic sounds. Today's brief dialogue is on the feeling, no, scrap that, is on spiritual progress. Very popular topic with the spiritual seeker, the aspirant of liberation and enlightenment. I get asked this question, or questions around this topic, quite a lot. So it's obviously something of interest to the mind. Interesting topic. Let's crack on. Spiritual progress. Spiritual progress is, broadly speaking, the idea that enlightenment is an achievement of sorts, or a goal in the future, and that you, the seeker, or me, the seeker, will reach that goal one day. Obviously, steps need to be taken within that model of some variation, some form or another, whether it's prayer, meditation, the old favourites, the old fallbacks, surrender, always a good spiritual technique to send you surging towards enlightenment at light speed. What else? Energy work, guru praise and worship, begging God, imploring God, calling on your angels, studying the ancient scriptures for clues, reading books, reading spiritual types of books, going to meetings, going to satsangs, whatever they are, going to workshops, retreats, retreating from the world to retreat into your inner space, and so forth. I think we all know, anyone who's listening to this will probably recognize a few of those. To what end do we attempt, do we endeavour with all these endeavours? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Is anyone doing it? Is there a goal, really? I don't know. Hey, the most common issue, this talk is not really on the techniques themselves, but the most common side effect, you might say, of the so-called attempt to progress towards some kind of spiritual goal is a twofold phenomena. One is the feeling that you're getting somewhere, and the other is the feeling that you're losing it. You've gone backwards. The getting it part feels good. We are rewarded with pleasure chemicals from the brain, and we feel a nice little tingle of warmth and love. Really getting this. I'm really on my way. Unfortunately, there are times when it seems we are backsliding down a slippery stainless steel ramp with cooking oil on that ramp. We're going down, and there's nothing we can do. And in these times, we are punished with thoughts of doubt and the chemicals of stress, cortisol, adrenaline, and others. And it feels, at least as the mind is reporting it, we're losing it. We're not getting what we want, etc. Interestingly, the very same phenomena can be observed by watching children, or, if you're at a zoo, watching Monkey Island at the zoo. Monkey Island, one of my favourite zoo enclosures, where you watch the full spectrum of human emotion play out within the span of 1 minute. Everything from joy, ecstasy, to guilt, shame, anger, aggression, fear, so on and so forth, all playing out in Monkey Island. Watch the monkey find a carrot. Joy, ecstasy. He runs off. He's followed by the alpha who wants the carrot. Pain, suffering, tears, anger, aggression. He loses the carrot. Depths of despair. When will I get my carrot back? The alpha walks off with the new carrot, triumphant, full of feelings of victory, superiority, as the poor loser monkey languishes in a pit of despair. Father having forsaken him, or something like that. So it is with little children too. You see the same deal play out. But as adults, we like to think that we're a little bit more sophisticated than the average monkey. However, ultimately, not really. It's the same mechanism, you might say, playing out. A sense that we're getting somewhere, getting a reward for it, or we're losing it, we're getting punished for it. The punishing feelings can be very unpleasant. Let's not underscore it with let's not pretend it doesn't exist with this jovial tone that I take. The negative feelings of losing it in spirituality can seem very, very low for the seeker. They can feel a lot of guilt and shame and despair, can even feel suicidal at times. The whole game, in one sense, is being played. It's playing out without anyone doing that game, as I've said many times. But when you're in the middle of that, it's not much of a comfort to know that it's all playing out and there's nothing you can do. However, it's interesting that you might be listening to this while you feel that discomfort. So, what is this losing it in the spiritual game of progression? Can you lose it? What am I losing? The way I like to describe it is through the little bit of psychoanalytic kind of stuff. The fantasy. The fantasy is a bit of a devil, a rather pernicious human phenomenon of mind. The fantasy, for want of a better word, is something imagination-oriented. The idea of tomorrow, future, with me obviously at the center of that stage, achieving something nice for myself. The fantasy often includes a hope of getting rid of negative character traits or problems and so forth. So, for example, you might have had a awful childhood, or might still be having one. A lot of struggle, a lot of pain in your past, a lot of thoughts that repeat and recycle about what an awful person you are and how your life just kind of sucks, and so forth. And of course, along with those come the negative feelings, which are always great. If the thoughts weren't bad enough, here come the emotions to remind you just how awful your life is. And then, of course, the fantasy is more or less the corollary. Am I using that word right? I'm not sure. The opposite to the pain. So for the depths and lowness of your agony, the concomitant fantasy, pulling out the big words, is of bliss, love and forgiveness and so forth. And there are times on that seemingly spiritual quest, or quest for improvement, that old beliefs are surrendered. Old attitudes dissolve. Old points of view simply just disappear. And with that can be felt a release or relief physically, emotionally in the body. And the thought, I'm getting it. This is it. I'm getting towards what I'm heading towards. I'm getting towards the thing, whatever that is. Enlightenment, spirituality, spiritual growth, spiritual progress, and so forth. And that lasts a while, maybe a few hours, maybe a few days, maybe a week, maybe a month, maybe even a year in some rare cases. But then it seems to fade away. That nice feeling just kind of goes away. And then, usually on the back of it, is a feeling of loss. Like, oh no, I thought I was getting it. I was on my way, and now I feel like I've lost it. What happens when we examine that a little bit more closely is more commonly the fantasy of what was imagined to be some kind of spiritual growth was being played out and seemingly achieved. And then the fantasy was being shattered. It was being proved wrong. The fading of a positive feeling, or the sense that the growth has gone away, somehow jars against the fantasy. Now, fantasies aren't necessarily bad, and not necessarily your problem in a way. They just happen. But it's worth knowing that the to and fro of up and down, of peak and trough, etc., is all part of the fantasy. It's all reliant on the fantasy. And the fantasy is your reference point. Your how do I know I'm getting somewhere reference point. And of course, we're back into the world of mind. The mind loves its reference points. The mind doesn't know anything without a reference point. There's no sense of progress, no way to value anything, no sense of achievement, etc., without a reference point, a baseline, a benchmark. So the issue really, if we come back to it, is of benchmarking, mental benchmarking, and then the playing out of life towards or away from the benchmark. So an easy way to view the whole endeavor now is to look at it as the mind getting what it wants, losing what it wants, getting what it wants, losing what it wants, or getting the fantasy, going away from the fantasy, going towards the fantasy, going away from the fantasy, and so on and so forth. So the idea that one is progressing spiritually is part of the story, the narrative of the person. Only a person can go towards something or go away from something, and of course that relies on the existence of that person. Without a person there, of course there cannot be any to or fro anything. There's no one there to achieve and no one there not to. I think you'll agree. So can one lose spiritual growth? Well, it depends, I suppose, on your definitions, of course, which is not much help. But in answer to the ultimate question, can you lose spiritual growth? Not really. And neither can you gain spiritual growth. The seeking for enlightenment or liberation is outside of that domain. You cannot achieve the context in which the achievement is happening. You cannot fail in the context in which the failure is happening, apparently. But the feelings are real at the time that they're happening. So can we do something about that, maybe, to make life a little bit more smooth? Well, the answer to that is yes. But bearing in mind, of course, that once we go into the how do I make myself feel better, we're now back into the world of mind and the story and the narrative. And so to be cautious about your understanding that this has nothing to do with liberation or enlightenment. This has now got to do with the fantasy. How to improve the fantasy. But why not? Why not improve the fantasy? Feeling bad, well, it just sucks. So let's have a little look at a few techniques within the fantasy, within the dream of being a person. The one technique, you might say, that I like to recommend to people, very easy one in essence, is to drop expectation that life should be a particular way. So we are basically destroying reference points, so the mind cannot latch on to anything. If life shouldn't be any particular way, then it's harder to feel that one is going right or wrong. But I'm going to add a caveat there. If life shouldn't be a particular way, you're going to get into the secondary problem of meaning. And that is, if you surrender all your reference points, you're going to end up in a very nihilistic, meaningless kind of space. Whereas when you're in the middle of the spiritual journey, or on your way somewhere, your life is heavily laden with meaning and purpose. And there are feel-good emotions to be had from that. So we need to be very cautious of the surrender and the subsequent feelings of meaninglessness, nihilism, and so forth that might come with that surrender. Surrendering feelings and letting go of reference points can be tricky, but I have a little trick to recommend. And we're going to call it, for want of a better word, not that I've ever really thought about labeling it, we're going to label it the owning my shit technique. That is, everything, I'm going to own it. I'm going to totally own everything about this world, or everything about me. So, for example, if something good happens, we might just own that. Yeah, I did something good, and I feel good for it. So what? Kind of thing. Then if something bad happens, we own that too. I screwed up. I made a mistake. I'm going to own that. But let's not stop with simple ownership. Why not exaggerate it? The reason for exaggerating it is it really nullifies the mind. It just neutralizes it dead. Stone cold dead. Not only did I fuck up, it was the best fuck up that anyone could ever do. In fact, when I think about it, I could have done better in my fucking up. I didn't quite nail it. I was still a little bit competent. Next time, I'll do better to truly mess it up. Or, the opposite. Wow, I did good. I did really good. I'm amazing. I feel really egotistical and awesome right now. That's great. But I don't feel as egotistical as I could. Perhaps next time I'll really inflate my ego and really have amazing feelings of grandiosity and superiority over everyone else. And there I am, owning my successes. And of course, you don't stop there. You own everything. You do something nice, you own that. You do something a bit silly, you own that. You do something that's a bit nothing, you own that. And so forth, and so on and so forth. And what happens, ultimately, is it starts to break down the fantasies. There's no way to get for the mind to get a handle on the reference points, especially when it comes to valuing, etc. The next technique is to address the secondary problem of meaninglessness and nihilism. This is actually a surprisingly easy thing to fix. And I think the Buddhists got it right when I think about it. Maybe other religions too, maybe Christianity. But Buddhism really sort of nails it. Compassion. Compassion is a wonderful tool to help the mind neutralize feelings of meaninglessness and pointlessness. So let me give you a reference point. Let me just give it to you, instead of you figuring it out. Just be nice to people, to try and better their day in any small way, in any little tiny itty-bitty way that you can. Not that you're going to succeed, And not that the goal is to succeed. It's the, I'm just going to try my best. I'm going to do my bit. So, here I am owning all my crap. I'm amazing. I'm awesome. I'm terrible. I'm a loser, etc. and so forth. And all the while I do that, I'm going to just make people's day a little bit better when I can. And that could be anything from helping little old ladies across the road, or putting a little donation in a donation basket, or those things at the cashier in shops where you drop in your change, to smiling at someone as they walk past, saying hello, nice day, good morning, how are you, so forth. You make a difference to the people around you in a slightly positive way, and it's a very good trick to short circuit the meaninglessness and nihilism that often results from messing around with the mind's reference points. Okay, so there's a couple of techniques for your spiritual journey to improve yourself, to be a better person. I hope everyone knows I'm kidding. So getting back to the summary point, spiritual progress is the mind game. It's a fantasy, story, narrative, etc. that plays out in the world of form, with the mind being the author, you might say. There's no progress to that which you are. There's no way to journey to that which you are, because that which you are does not come or go. It has no way to approach it, nor any way to get rid of it. It can't be known. It can't be described. I can't tell you what it is. The telling you of what it is what it is. Which is really annoying. So this dialogue, I guess, was just to ease the whatever you call it, journey, so to speak, for spiritual aspirants who might find themselves struggling. There's nothing wrong with spiritual journeys and spiritual progress and so on and so forth, as long as we're all clear on the single central point that it will not lead you to that which you are. Yet, there's no one there to stop doing it, even if they wanted to. Ha! It's annoying, isn't it? Anyway, I hope you got a couple of techniques you can use there to feel a little bit better about yourself while you go through the awfulness of the spiritual journey, and it is awful. Questions and comments are welcome. X Winterview, going for a surf, signing off.